Hi everyone, it's Tony, your tax lady from JMC Accountancy. Rachel Reeves has just finished today's autumn statement, so here's a quick breakdown of what it actually means for you, your family and your small business. Now here are the main headlines that you need to know, with no jargon, no BS, just the facts. Let's start with the big one. Income tax thresholds are now frozen until 2028. That means that the personal allowance is staying at 12,570 and the higher rate threshold isn't moving either. Now, normally you'd think nothing's changed, there's nothing to worry about, but actually this is where the fiscal drag kicks in, because national minimum wage is rising to £10.85 and the national living wage is rising to £12.71. The average full-time worker will actually pay £208 more per year, even though the rate hasn't changed. So if you're a small business owner, yes, it just got more expensive to employ your staff and pay them. Next up, nobody's favourite line item, dividend, interest and tax savings rates are increasing by 2% for both basic and higher rate taxpayers. So if you take dividends from your limited company or you rely on savings or interest income, expect your tax bill to increase again this year. Small business owners, this one will hit you directly. And for those of you with electric or hybrid vehicles, there is now a tax charge of 3p per mile for electric vehicles and 1.5p per mile for hybrid vehicles. So in short, your wage bill is going up, your tax on the money you're taking out of your company is going up, and your own personal tax could increase, even though your income will probably stay the same. A lot of today's announcements sound small on paper, but they add up very quickly for business owners. I will be sending out a complete, easy to understand breakdown tomorrow with examples for small business owners, limited company directors, employers, employees, side hustlers and dividend takers. If you want a copy delivered straight to your inbox, just comment budget below and I'll send it over. Stay calmed, stay informed, and as always, I'm here to make sure tax makes sense.
Good day, fellow connoisseurs of political chaos and fiscal fiascos. Welcome back to the British Report, where we peel back the layers of Westminster's latest blunders, one exquisitely exasperating policy at a time. Today, my friends, we are diving headfirst into a story so utterly bonkers, so profoundly perplexing, you might just need a strong cup of Earl Grey and a stiff upper lip. We're talking about Rachel Reeves, the esteemed Shadow Chancellor, and a tax bill so disastrous it's making even seasoned economists clutch their pearls. And when I say disastrous, I mean the kind of disastrous that makes you wonder if they're playing a high-stakes game of Jenga with the national economy and someone just pulled the wrong block. Quick favour, if you're loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It's free. Takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show. Now you might think, what's all the fuss about a tax bill? Aren't they always a bit taxing? Oh, my dear viewer, you haven't seen anything yet. This isn't just any tax bill. This is the tax bill that has Premier Inn, the venerable institution of reasonably priced slumber and questionable breakfast buffets, in an absolute spin. Yes, the very same Premier Inn that has seen you through countless family holidays, impromptu business trips, and perhaps even a few regrettable stag or hen does. Their owner, Whitbread, a titan of British hospitality, has been left scratching its corporate head, facing a rather chunky £35 million hit, thanks to a bit of governmental tinkering with business rates. Now, £35 million might sound like chump change to some of you oligarchs out there, but for a company that runs hundreds of hotels and restaurants, it's enough to make the bean counters break out in a cold sweat. And while they've managed to bring that figure down from an initial estimate of £40 million to £50 million, a minor victory perhaps, like finding a tenner in an old coat, Whitbread is still absolutely seething. They're calling these tax changes damaging for the industry. And when a company that literally profits from people sleeping comfortably starts complaining, you know something is truly amiss in the hallowed halls of power.
In Hackney alone, 1,000 families on benefits with 5 or 6 children stand to gain £74 million from the lifting of the 2-child benefit cap. Some of those families will be getting more than £14,000 a year. At the budget, income tax thresholds were frozen. So do you know how many people's thresholds were frozen just to pay for those families in Hackney? We're not talking about the whole country, just the families in Hackney. The number we have found is 340,000 taxpayers. That is where that threshold money is going to come from. 340,000 taxpayers to pay for just 1,000 families. It's no wonder people are angry.
Let's rewind a little, shall we? Picture this: November's autumn budget, a time of year traditionally reserved for cosy nights in, hot chocolates, and perhaps a spot of early Christmas shopping. But no, not for our intrepid Chancellor. Oh no, the government, in its infinite wisdom, decided this was the perfect moment to announce some permanent business rate cuts. Sounds good, right? Cuts are good. Well, hold your horses, because this is where the plot thickens like a forgotten gravy boat. These cuts were specifically for retail, hospitality and leisure premises with rateable values below £500,000. And how are these cuts funded, you ask? By imposing higher charges on larger properties. It's like giving a discount to the corner shop by making the supermarket pay more. On the surface, it might sound like a Robin Hood scenario, taking from the rich to give to the, well, slightly less rich. But as with all things government-related, the devil, as always, is in the deeply unpleasant details. The hospitality sector, bless its heart, has been screaming blue murder ever since. They've warned that these higher rateable values and the gradual vanishing act of existing reliefs mean that many businesses, even those ostensibly benefiting from the cuts, will still be staring down the barrel of rising tax bills when these changes finally bite in April. It's a bit like being offered a half-price slice of cake, only to discover the price of the flour and eggs has tripled. The discount becomes a cruel illusion. And it's not just Whitbread grumbling. Investment bank Bernstein, those delightful folks who spend their days scrutinising balance sheets with the intensity of a bloodhound on a scent, immediately downgraded Whitbread's shares. Their warning? These changes would have a material impact on the company's profitability. And when an investment bank uses words like material impact, you know they're not talking about a gentle nudge. They're talking about a financial sledgehammer. It's a ripple effect, my friends, a domino cascade of economic discomfort, all stemming from a seemingly innocuous policy change. Even the industry's own mouthpiece, UK Hospitality, has joined the chorus of disapproval. They're pointing out that any supposed benefit from the paltry 5p business rates discount is being utterly obliterated by a perfect storm of wage rises, the ever-present holiday taxes, and you guessed it, those pesky increases in rateable values. It's like being offered a penny to pick up a pound, only to find the pound is actually made of lead, and now you have a hernia. The government giveth with one hand and taketh away with several others, leaving the hospitality sector feeling like they've been invited to a party only to be charged for the air they breathe. Despite these rather monumental headwinds, Whitbread, being the resilient British institution it isn't just sitting around moping into its flat white. Oh no, they're exploring options, darling. Always exploring. They're looking to improve profitability, which frankly sounds like trying to find a needle in a haystack while blindfolded and wearing oven mitts, given the current climate. This improved outlook, however, might just ease the pressure from those rather aggressive activist investors, like Corvex Management LP, who have been circling like vultures, demanding a strategic review. An update, we are told, is expected on April 30th. Mark your calendars, folks, for what promises to be either a triumphant declaration of fiscal ingenuity or a deeply British shrug of resignation. The group has also announced it now expects to deliver between £75 million and £80 million in cost efficiencies as part of its 5-year growth plan. Now, cost efficiencies is corporate speak for we're going to tighten our belts so much we might just disappear into a different dimension. But it's a necessary evil, I suppose, when the government is essentially picking your pocket with one hand while shaking your hand with the other.
The modern phrase is gaslighting, isn't it? I mean, that was what I promised at the last election was to stabilise the economy. No, it wasn't. What you promised at the last election was not to increase income tax, national insurance and VAT. One would hope that you would stabilise the economy anyway. That's sort of your job. There is the groundwork being laid, ladies and gentlemen, to explain why she thinks she's going to have to put up income tax, because otherwise there would be deep cuts in capital spending. But here's the truth. That was visible from space before the last general election. And I know I keep banging on about it, but hey, we've got to get something right. I kept trying to tell you, I kept trying to say over and over again that the Tories left cuts of some £20 billion to public services at their last budget, that all of this was out there, all of this was available to see, and Labour deliberately closed their eyes to it, said that they were going to grow the economy and that would get us out of any cuts that were going to come in the future, and that they weren't going to increase income tax, national insurance or VAT. They knew that that was going to be a promise they would be hard-pressed to keep, if at all.
In Brighton news, Whitbread actually reported that group sales rose by a respectable 2% to 181 millions in the 3 months leading up to November 27th. This was largely driven by the sturdy performance of its Premier Inn businesses both here in the United Kingdom and, rather impressively, in Germany. UK accommodation sales also saw a 2% rise, with revenue per available room up by 3%. And in a rather encouraging spurt of festive cheer, both these measures increased by a further 3% in the 6 weeks leading up to January 8th. So despite the political machinations, it seems the good old British public, and indeed our German cousins, still enjoy a decent night's kip without breaking the bank. It's almost as if people still need places to stay, regardless of what Treasury boffins decide to do with spreadsheets. This solid performance comes hot on the heels of a rather significant restructuring launched in 20... And when a company restructures, it usually means some tough decisions have been made. In Whitbread's case, this involved the rather heartbreaking step of cutting around 1,500 jobs, a stark reminder that behind every policy change, every tax adjustment, there are real people and real livelihoods. They also reduced their branded restaurant estate by about 200 sites, all in a strategic pivot to focus squarely on expanding their hotel room portfolio. It's a classic business move, shed the dead weight, double down on what works. But it's never an easy path. Dominic Paul, the esteemed head honcho at Whitbread, confidently declared, "We delivered a strong performance in the third quarter, with positive momentum across the business." He then added, with what I imagine was a steely glint in his eye, "We remain highly disciplined regarding our strategic actions, and by focusing on what we can control, we have continued to make great progress against our key initiatives and will deliver a higher level of efficiencies in full year 2026 than previously expected." It's a classic corporate statement, isn't it? Full of buzzwords and reassuring pronouncements, but beneath the polished veneer, you can almost hear the faint gritting of teeth, the quiet determination to navigate the treacherous waters of British economic policy. So what does this all mean for Rachel Reeves, our Shadow Chancellor, who finds herself caught in the crosshairs of this latest disastrous tax bill? Well, it means she's got a rather large headache on her hands. As the architect, or at least the prominent face of Labour's economic vision, every stumble, every misstep by the current government becomes a potential landmine for her own future plans. While the Conservatives are currently in power, any policy that creates this much friction, this much financial pain for a major industry, becomes a potent weapon in the hands of the opposition. The optics are simply dreadful. Here we have a government that claims to support businesses, to foster growth, yet they've introduced a tax change that a major British hospitality player, one that employs thousands and contributes significantly to the economy, is labelling as damaging. It's a gift wrapped in a rather unfortunate bow for the opposition. Rachel Reeves, therefore, must tread carefully. She has to critique the government's missteps without alienating the very businesses she hopes to support. If Labour ever gets into power, it's a tightrope walk, my friends, across a chasm of public opinion and corporate discontent. The very essence of this debacle highlights a recurring theme in British politics: the seemingly endless struggle to balance the books, to stimulate growth, and to provide fair taxation, all without inadvertently kneecapping a vital sector of the economy. The government's intention, one assumes, was to provide relief to smaller businesses, a noble goal, perhaps, but the implementation, as is so often the case, seems to have created as many problems as it solved, if not more. It's a classic case of short-term thinking leading to long-term headaches. Imagine, if you will, that the British economy is a rather complex and perpetually leaky plumbing system. The government, in its attempts to fix one leaky tap, small business rates, has inadvertently caused a geyser to erupt in the main pipe, larger hospitality businesses. And now everyone is standing around with buckets, looking slightly bewildered while the water level steadily rises. Rachel Reeves, in this analogy, is currently standing on the sidelines, pointing at the geyser and muttering about the poor workmanship. But she also knows that if she ever gets her hands on the wrench, she'll have to figure out how to turn it off without flooding the entire house. This isn't just about Premier Inn's bottom line, you see. This is about the wider message it sends to businesses, both large and small, about the stability and predictability of the UK's tax regime. Businesses, particularly those that require significant long-term investment, crave certainty. They need to be able to plan for the future, to make investment decisions based on a clear understanding of the fiscal landscape. When the rules of the game keep changing, when a seemingly beneficial policy has such unintended and detrimental consequences, it creates an environment of apprehension. It deters investment, It makes companies think twice before expanding, before creating jobs. And that, my friends, is a far more insidious and damaging consequence than a mere £35 million hit. The entire episode serves as a powerful reminder that in the intricate dance of economic policy, every step has a consequence. Every cut, every hike, every re-evaluation reverberates throughout the entire system. And when you're dealing with an economy as complex and interconnected as Britain's, a seemingly small adjustment can lead to a ripple effect that touches everything from the price of a pint to the cost of a good night's sleep. Rachel Reeves, as a potential future Chancellor, will be watching this closely, undoubtedly making mental notes, perhaps even sketching out alternative plumbing solutions in her notebook. The challenge, as always, will be to learn from the mistakes of the past without repeating them herself. It's a tough gig being in charge of the nation's finances, especially when the nation's plumbers seem to be in a perpetual state of creative chaos. So as Whitbread presses on, trying to navigate these choppy fiscal waters, and as Rachel Reeves sharpens her rhetorical knives for the next parliamentary joust, one thing is clear: the British political landscape remains as unpredictable and as dramatically entertaining as ever. And we, here at the British Report, will be here to analyse every single twist, turn and utterly baffling decision. Thank you for watching.